Welcome back. Keiichi-kun, you can get up now. Let's tell her everything. That looks like what Mi-chan wants to. I had known it would turn out like this from the beginning. Hadn't I come here prepared for that? I mustered my willpower and bit my lip. Genuinely, who does that? Mion, you called Rika-chan and Satoko the day before last, right? I don't remember doing so. If you have a reason to think so, could you let me hear it? It was evening, before dinner time. Rika-chan should have come here, bringing a big bottle of soy sauce, to have you share some with her. Mion was trying to keep from showing any reaction, but I didn't miss her eyelid twitching just a little bit. Why do you think that? It's not hard to understand. Mi-chan, you saw it too, didn't you? Rika-chan's room. Mion put a finger to her forehead and acted like she was thinking. Ah yes, like we all do. There was chilled tofu, but no soy sauce. Plus, the big bottle of soy sauce that should have been under the sink was nowhere to be found. Ah ha 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 ha. What? Same. Is that why she would have come here? Mion, drop the act. You wrote it yourself on the notice, didn't you? That you'd share your soy sauce. Mion scratched her head. I heard her ever so faintly click her tongue. It was as though we'd found out she'd purposefully given too little change to a servant. Wait, what? That's a weird thing to say right there. That's all I could feel from her. Then, Mi-chan, you, Rika-chan, you error. You hid her. Lena hesitated for a moment. I could tell that she didn't want to use the word erased, and that she was struggling to find another word. That was really supposed to be the end, wasn't it? For you, anyway. What are you talking about? You didn't foresee that Rika-chan would tell Satoko-chan that she was going to your house, did you, Mi-chan? Wait. Why would Rika-chan not tell Satoko-chan that she was going to the house? Like, hello? That has to be the worst villainous plan ever, to not suspect that two people living together wouldn't tell each other that they were going to someone's house. Hello? Indeed. Then Satoko-chan called. Might Rika be imposing on you? Yeah, probably just like that. Ah ha 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 ha, you sound just like her. Mi-chan, you were in a bit of a bind then, because someone knew that Rika-chan had come here. So, you decided to lure Satoko-chan here too. Lure her out? Like how, I wonder? Mion prodded Lena on, as if trying to get to the good part of an interesting story. I, however, knew. I had been watching Mion change the whole time. She was restlessly twirling her fingers. She had clearly lost her calm. Of course, it was really a slight thing, and only I, who had been watching her this whole time, would have known. Mion was panicking. What Lena was saying must have been a bullseye. It probably went like this. Satoko, I actually made too much dinner today, so why not come over and eat? Rika-chan came earlier and already ate some. Something like that. Scratch. Mion's nails dug into her knee. Heh. There's no recordings of the phone conversations or anything, so how do you know that much? I know it because the dinner that Satoko-chan made for the two of them was plastic wrapped in their refrigerator and hadn't been touched. For a few moments, Mion's face was frozen in utter amazement. She looked like she couldn't believe that this person in front of her was Lena. With just that to go on, how did you even guess what we said over the phone? It's a long explanation, so I'll get to the point. The contents of that refrigerator provided a vivid account of what you said over the phone when you lured her out. Yes, that's exactly how cold tofu in the fridge works. Understandable. Mion's jaw remained on the floor. That was the only way I could describe her face. That's... ah ha 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 ha. I had no idea I had such an incredible detective right next to me the whole time. I can't believe you'd figure out everything, down to the phone conversation, just from what was inside the fridge. Ah ha 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 ha. You've got me there. You've got me. You've got me. Ah ha 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 ha. As if a dam had burst, Mion convulsed into laughter. Her laughter, though, definitely didn't make us want to laugh as well. Ha 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 ha. Mion grew tired of her dumb laughter, heaved a big sigh, and scratched her head. Same. It almost seemed like Mion had lost a detective punishment game for the club or something, and her punishment had been decided. Oh, how fun that would have been if it were true. An incredible detective. Mi-chan, you're the one who guessed what Oishi-san told us. He called me an incredible detective too. Nani? As soon as she heard Oishi-san's name, Mion's eyes began to display panic more clearly, so that anyone would be able to tell. Mion? The police have suspected you for a long time now. Oishi-san's officers have had the house under observation so that they could break in at any time. Mion attempted to feign calm, but it looked like she was having a hard time with that. Part of her couldn't believe that the police had her surrounded, and she closely examined Lena's facial expression. However, she couldn't detect a hint of falsehood. Finally, Mion seemed to accept the fact that the police were encircling the house. Was the mayor Mi-chan too? Were Tomitake-san and Takano-san you as well? Mion didn't answer our rapid-fire questions. I could clearly see impatience in her eyes, which were still feigning calm. At last, Mion, who had been sitting there lazily, readjusted her cushion and sat herself upright. At that moment, the atmosphere in the room completely changed. Mion's expression also changed. The impatience and wonderment in her expression disappeared, and she became so solemn you would think she was about to conduct a tea ceremony. I'm not sure tea ceremony is the thing I would compare her expression to here, but okay. I could sense it. It was now, in this moment, Mion had ceased to be Mion, but had changed into Mion Sonozaki, the current heir to the Sonozaki house. That solemn atmosphere about her was clearly abnormal, and was entirely different from that of the Mion I knew. Now I could believe it. Now I could believe that she was the young leader who commanded the entire Sonozaki clan. Mion quietly placed both her hands on the tatami mat, and gave a beautifully elegant bow, as if this really were a tea ceremony, and named herself. We meet for the first time. I am the current heir to the Sonozaki house. My name is Mion. Mion's movements were so elegant, they could cut. What? What does that even mean? How can someone... Why are we describing... Okay. And we couldn't even answer her. All Lena and I could do was watch, baffled at her actions, which we could never imagine the normal her doing. I would like to welcome you to the Sonozaki main house today. I will greet you all in place of our leader, Oryo. It seems as though you have various things you would like to ask. If I can be of any assistance, then I would like to answer without concealing anything. Nani? What did Mion just say? Mion said she would answer anything we asked. There was a strong light of resolve in her eyes. It's really all right if we ask anything then. I shall tell you everything I know. That is why you have come here after all. Lena and I exchanged glances. There was a mountain of things we wanted to ask Mion. However, we hesitated for a moment on what we should ask first. The first question Lena gave was extremely abstract, but it was the question everyone wanted to know right now. Why would you do this? Indeed, that was what I wanted to ask as well. Why would you do this? That didn't only go for Rika-chan and Satoko. It went for the mayor, Takano-san, and Tomitake-san as well. No, even further back, for all the incidents that had been occurring every year. For a little while, Mion couldn't respond. Right when we realized that the question was too vague and tried to put it into more concrete terms, she finally opened her mouth to speak. To answer that question will take some time. If that is acceptable, however, then I would by all means like you to hear it. She spoke clearly. She spoke with a clarity that a grandmother might use when telling a story from a long time ago. These, similes and metaphors and everything in this game are incredibly strange. Do you know that Hinamizawa village used to be called Onigafuchi village? I assure you, I do know that. Lena nodded lightly, then shot me a glance, asking me if I did. I returned her nod. Hinamizawa was once called Onigafuchi village, yes. I heard all about that night from Takano-san in the ritual storehouse. They firmly believed that demon blood ran through their veins and cut off all contact with the outside world. They were worshipped by those in the villages at the foot of the mountains and treated like transcendents, those capable of magic. Sounds like a Marvel comic. That's right. Our ancestors in Onigafuchi village were proud transcendents, descended from the demons. Those in the villages at the foot of the mountains worshipped and honored them. Nevertheless, that all decayed with the end of the Tokugawa era. The black ships arrived. The era of the samurai ended. The era of national isolation ended. And the tradition of worshipping Onigafuchi village quickly disappeared. Those things that linger from the past were all to be detested. That was the kind of era it became. The Meiji era began, and the name of Onigafuchi village, with its long history, was forcibly changed to Hinamizawa village. I have heard the Meiji government strongly wished to erase the old customs. The abolition of feudal domains, and the establishment of prefectures. An era had begun, seeing Japan sprinting up the stairs that were beyond their means to try and reach the same level as the rest of the world. All things in the Western style were to be extolled, while all old traditional things were to be scorned. That was the sort of era it was. Our ancestors in Onigafuchi village were proud transcendents descended from the demons. Onigafuchi village disappeared in a flash. At last, Japan, provoked by the great European powers colonizing countries in Asia one by one, began a policy to increase its wealth and military power so that it could stand as a global power in its own right. Conscription began, and they won war after war, the First Sino-Japanese War and the Russo-Japanese War, and, until the Pacific War broke out, they recklessly climbed the staircase towards modernization. At the time, Onigafuchi village had already lost its impenetrability. The villagers, once worshipped as transcendents, were now on the receiving end of inhumane treatment. The sacred Onigafuchi village had been groundlessly labelled an isolated village of those afflicted with incurable diseases, a mere shadow of its former self, and stood on the precipice of an era of hardship. Thus began harsh days, where one would suffer unreasonable discrimination just because people knew one was from Onigafuchi. The children in the village at the foot of the mountain were taught not to go near Hinamizawa because filthy germs were rampant there. Children who had come into contact with children in Hinamizawa would cry and wail as their parents purified the spot they were touched on by rubbing salt on it. One of the adults said to the children that if you got lost in Hinamizawa, you would be kidnapped by demons, cut up into pieces, and devoured. Never, ever go near the terrifying village of the man-eating demons. That's what he taught them. Another said that during a famine long ago, the people of Hinamizawa gathered up all the corpses they discarded into the dry riverbeds, then cooked and ate them in order to survive. Groundless stories, but said in such seriousness. Baseless slander added to baseless slander, making Onigafuchi village's history accurate, thrilling history all the more believable. Perhaps the chain of undue discrimination was a manifestation of the people's anxiety towards the uncertain times. Of course, the story didn't end only with the perspective of children. If anyone found out you were from Onigafuchi, you would be turned down from any job you applied for. People would even go back on engagements and marriage proposals. As for the marriages where one partner had lied about it, as soon as the truth got out, they were made to divorce. It even caused trials. They would appeal that where one came from wasn't an important enough reason to divorce. They would, however, lose their case. Lying about one's birthplace apparently constitutes a heavy act of misrepresentation in marriage. That's terrible. I've heard about such discrimination towards those in small villages in civics class. Just because others knew you were from a tiny hamlet, you would be subjected to every societal disadvantage there was, a modern form of bullying. Though I only memorized that because it was going to be on a test one time. I recalled being suspicious about it, and unable to believe such discrimination occurred in modern Japan. Ha! Keiichi, let me tell you about it. Well, I suppose I can't say that it... I suppose I can't say that they weren't asking for it. Indeed. That is a strong sentence. Our ancestors were proud of the demon blood flowing through them. That's a tongue twister. They lived their lives, boasting about it and scorning those at the foot of the mountain after all. They struck fear into the villagers down there with their mystique and demanded gifts of dread and tribute. I'm absolutely going to have that put on my tombstone. Struck fear into the villagers with mystique and demanded gifts of dread and tribute. With that, Mion smiled for the first time, albeit in self-mockery. Oh, talking is hard today. During the Pacific War, despite the slogans that all the country was acting as one, those from Hinamizawa continued to suffer all manner of discrimination. There were too many ways to count. They would send their husbands and sons to war, and the women on the home front would suffer greatly too. My grandmother remembers it well. She remembers it being a difficult time. Even that bitterly long war, however, finally ended in 1945. Hinamizawa had lost many male hands, but at last their husbands and their fathers and husbands and sons returned to them. Of course, there were also many who didn't come back. Nevertheless, for those in Hinamizawa who were at their limits, barely able to maintain the village without the men, their return was a very happy thing. MacArthur's GHQ set to work on drastically improving mindsets and strove for the abolition of unfair discrimination. They could feel day breaking on the dismal night that was the previous era. Hinamizawa was on the verge of turning into a ghost town. Those in the village started to say that they should rebuild it once again and got to work, trying to make the village even a little more plentiful. During that time, someone appeared who built up a fortune through a vast number of dealings in the black market. That was Mion's grandfather, the husband of the elderly current family leader, Sohei Sonozaki. Sohei said that he managed food warehouses in Harbin after being dispatched to the Chinese mainland. When it was time to pull out, he conspired with his superiors and comrades and stole a great deal of the army's canned goods. He hid them somewhere in the Seto Inland Sea and sold them widely at a high price on the black market, thus earning a fortune. Sohei didn't spend that fortune for his own pleasure either. He entrusted the entire amount to his wife, the head of the Sonozaki family. Let's revive this ruined village. All who live here are our family, and this fortune is our collective property. So he proclaimed to my grandmother, the current head of the family. That vast fortune was a huge reason why Hinamizawa was revitalized after the war. I see. With that, Hinamizawa came back to life, and that's how the Sonozaki family had established its current prosperity. That was a history lesson. Of course, there were many people who begrudged the money coming from the black market, but the villagers no longer minded it. They succeeded at one business venture after another. Those who had succeeded freely supported those who followed them. The giant family of Hinamizawa, tied together with strong bonds, kept on expanding its influence. The Sonozaki family, the center of everything, would be extolled for a long time as the minds behind Hinamizawa's revitalization. The person at the middle of it all was your Nana, Mii-chan. That's amazing! What a great success! Mion looked like she was honestly happy Nena had praised her. However, around 1955, the wind started blowing in the other direction again. Because of the canned flesh incident. Canned flesh? It sounded so hideous that just hearing it made me nauseous. Someone naming himself as my grandfather Sohei Sonozaki's superior confessed that those canned goods had been human flesh. Ew. Hinamizawa, a village in which demons lived and ate humans. They were just about to wipe away that cursed stigma. The light they had finally started to see in their peaceful lives grew hazy and disappeared. The shocking truth, as revealed by his former superior, the stolen provisions from the old Japanese army that had been a huge cornerstone for Hinamizawa's revival, had been canned human flesh. Why were there cans like that? Wasn't Sohei just the manager of food warehouses? His superior revealed that Sohei Sonozaki did not have the job of managing the food. In reality, Sohei's job during the war had been to exterminate pestilent mice and to transport the corpses of those with infectious diseases. Oh, this is getting horrible. It had been unfair treatment, and all because of the lowliness of his origins. As a result, though, he had returned safely without having been sent to the front lines or being detained. Perhaps that was the only fortunate thing to happen to him. Finally, Sohei was enlisted as an assistant at a military medical institution. There, however, he found something even worse than the low, scorned, depressing customs of Onigafuchi village. In the research they were carrying out. Oh. Could that have been, well, you know, the bacteriological cause in the cause in the old Japanese army or whatever? Yeah, we know what they're talking about. Keiichi-kun, you've heard of that? What could it be? I was pretty sure it was Unit 731. There it is. It was a nightmare unit that devoted itself to researching terrifying bacteriological weapons to break the deadlock in the war. They used many innocent people as fodder for horrible human experiments. They methodically observed how many days a new strain would take to kill the victims. How many days it would be when injected. How many days it would be when swallowed. They dissected many people to find that out. Sometimes they wouldn't bother waiting until they were dead and dissected them while they were still alive. They would strap them into centrifuges while still alive and crush them in decompression chambers while still alive. When a live human decompresses... Okay, I'm just gonna spare myself and not read that. I have a feeling I saw something like that on a documentary one time. That makes me sick, yeah. And they still hate Hinamizawa, huh? Wait, what? What does that have to do with each other? You said it. Like, why wouldn't they hate Hinamizawa if that was what was going on? Mion agreed with me, giving a faint, sad smile. It wasn't much in the way of communication, but for some reason I was happy to have it right now. The unit Sohei was in did way kinder research than that. They were researching concrete methods for reducing the difficulty of delivering food on the battlefield. Okay, so he wasn't involved in the unit. The military's designs at the start of the war completely fell apart and a chronic food shortage broke out all over the battlefront. The food shortage led to malnutrition, and as their natural resistances lowered, the soldiers fell to one disease after another. Spirit and morale lowered as well. They wouldn't be able to maintain their forces at this rate. Apparently, that's where the research started. At first, it was to find methods of delivering food to the battlefields. It It was very broad and included things from violent methods like stealing it from citizens to survival methods like how to cook unfamiliar insects and plant life. As they were working out the details, they kept straying off course and going out of control, until finally they knocked down a door called taboo. What do you think the easiest source of protein on a battlefield is? Ew. No thank you. Lena and I knew the answer without being told. So we didn't answer. That's right. They were researching ways to handle using humans as food. No. Fighting onwards, sometimes eating the flesh of enemies, and sometimes that of allies, became the ultimate service paid to their country. They were deathly serious about this doctrine. It really is a riot. My grandfather was despised as someone who ate human flesh, and yet they had gone above and beyond that. Apparently, he always thought about it too. Even if he was a vulgar, man-eating demon, they were far more ugly demons than he. So no matter how much he was scorned, he wouldn't put up with it. At last, they had a handful of test prototypes. When the soldiers learned it was human flesh, however, the scientists couldn't make anyone eat it. Yeah, no shit. So it was apparently sent to the front lines. The cans were labelled meat substitutes, and so that they wouldn't accidentally eat it themselves, they stamped the bottoms with a circle. The starved soldiers on the front lines apparently loved all the prototypes they were sent. Oh. Among them, those who cooked it in soy sauce. Ooh, like it was sukiyaki. Loved it the most. Well, thanks for ruining soy sauce for me. Thanks. Appreciated. Come on, Mi-chan. Stop. I'm getting sick to my stomach. Same. Lena really was pale-faced, and she looked like she was having difficulty continuing to sit on her knees. Mion looked like she had more to say, but she sighed lightly and stopped there. Then, those canned goods your grandpa brought back. I don't know if it's true. Sohei denied it was human flesh up until the day he died. However, those who begrudged Hinamizawa's sudden revival called him a savage for making a fortune from selling human flesh, and the villagers began to be scorned again. They returned to a time where children would be jeered at and have rocks thrown at them. The stifling silence came back. What a seriously hopeless and sad story it was. They discriminated, were discriminated against, discriminated, and were discriminated against. Why must they attach worth and rank to it? Why can't they live without looking down on people? Why can't everyone enjoy life together? Wiser words were never said. I didn't know. My grandmother, the family head, once told the children of this village that if they throw a stone at one of you, then 2 of you must throw stones back. The children asked her, what if they threw stones at 2 of us? Of course, the answer was simple. If they throw stones at 2 of you, throw them back with 4. If they chase 8 of you with sticks, drive them off with 16. If they slander 30 of you, yell back with 60. Finally, the children asked, what if we're attacked by 1,000 people? Even that answer was simple. If 1,000 people attack you, then everyone in Hinamizawa will stand up against them. It was a manifesto to spur people into action. My grandmother rose up not only as the leader of the Sonozaki house, but as the mother of Hinamizawa. It was halfway through 1955. It was a time when riots over the treaty with the US were rampant, a time of battle and action. The people of Hinamizawa joined together and fought, treating unfair discrimination towards one as a crime against them all. It didn't matter whether that one was a child or an adult. If they heard that a child had been told off, then everyone would crowd the house of the perpetrator, acting as a whole. If they heard an adult had been treated unfairly, men and women, young and old, would all band together and stand up against it. If you meddled with people from Hinamizawa, you would be in trouble. They probably figured that if they could make others think that, they'd win. Kei-chan, do you remember how many people came to help you when you got involved with those delinquents in town? I recalled how much of an impression it had left on me. That the people of Hinamizawa boldly came to my rescue, yet the people of Okinomiya averted their eyes so they wouldn't get involved. My grandmother fought and my parents carried on the fight. At last, peace returned to Hinamizawa. Of course, that peace had been placed on a razor's edge. When you consider the previous 100 years of history, the tranquility now can only be called a chance interval, standing on uneven scales. Why? Could I really have an opinion on such a long and difficult history when I hadn't moved here more than a year ago? Yet, I said it anyway. Alright, we're going to end this episode here. That is like the biggest pack of information we've had since I think this particular chapter started. That was a lot of history. I'm very happy there was very little waffling this time. Anyway, come back next week. We'll find out more of what's happening on and where everyone has gone. I'll see you guys then. See ya.